Captain Marcus White stood at the observation window of the research facility and looked out at the strange landscape of Kepler 442b. The planet had two suns that hung low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. The ground beneath the facility was rocky and covered with low vegetation that looked nothing like Earth plants. His daughter Sophie was 7 years old, and she was supposed to be sleeping in her quarters. Instead, Marcus heard her small footsteps running through the corridor behind him. Sophie came to stand beside her father and pressed her small face against the glass. She was pale-skinned with dark hair that fell to her shoulders. She wore a simple white suit designed for children to use inside the facility. "Daddy, look at the animals," Sophie said, pointing toward the distant hills. Marcus looked where she pointed. He had seen these creatures before during the team's expeditions. They looked like Earth honey badgers, but were larger, almost the size of a small dog. One of them moved across the rocky terrain with a strange, purposeful gait. Its black and white fur was thick and matted. "Those are the local animals, sweetheart. They seem to be everywhere on this continent," Marcus said. "Can I have one?" Sophie asked. "We have to study them first." "Maybe later," Marcus replied, but he was not really listening to Sophie anymore. His attention had shifted to the readings on the monitors behind him. Something was wrong. The electromagnetic sensors were picking up unusual activity from the northern part of the continent. The activity had started 3 hours ago and was growing stronger. Dr. Patricia Holmes, the lead scientist on the team, entered the observation room. She was a tall woman with gray hair tied back in a strict bun. Her face looked tired. "Captain, we have a problem," Patricia said. "The sensors are detecting something massive moving toward us from the north. I have never seen readings like this before." Marcus turned away from Sophie and moved to the main console. Patricia showed him the data. Multiple energy signatures were approaching their location. The readings suggested large ships, perhaps 20 or more. The speed was incredible. "How long until they reach us?" Marcus asked. 2 hours, maybe less," Patricia answered. Sophie pulled on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, that one is coming closer," she said, pointing at the honey badger creature again. The animal had moved even closer to the facility. It was now less than 100 meters away. The creature stood on its hind legs and scratched at the ground with its front paws. It made a sound like a low growl. Marcus wanted to send Sophie back to her quarters, but he knew that keeping her close was safer. He held her hand. "The unknown ships are not responding to our hails," Patricia said, "and they are not slowing down." The facility began to shake. Small items on the tables rattled. Sophie gripped her father's hand tighter. "Get everyone to the intersections," Marcus ordered. "Activate the emergency shields. Now." The facility had limited defenses, designed only to protect against meteor strikes and solar radiation, not against a hostile force. Marcus knew this. The realization made his stomach feel heavy. Patricia moved quickly to the communication station. She sent messages to the other research team members scattered throughout the facility. The honey badger outside continued to scratch at the ground. Its movements were becoming more frantic. It dug deeper, sending dirt flying behind it. The creature did not look afraid. Instead, it looked determined, like it was trying to tell them something. "Daddy, the animal knows something," Sophie said. Marcus was not sure how a 7-year-old girl could read an animal's behavior better than trained scientists, but he had learned to trust his daughter's instincts. She noticed small things that adults often missed. The sky above the facility began to change. The two suns were hidden by massive shadows. The ships were arriving. They hung above the research facility like dark clouds, blocking out the light. No fires erupted. No weapons fired. The ships simply positioned themselves around the facility in a perfect circle. The silence that followed was worse than any sound of battle. Marcus activated the emergency communication system. His voice was steady and calm, even though his heart was racing. "This is Captain Marcus White of the human research vessel Discovery. We come to Kepler 442b in peace for scientific study. We mean no harm to your world or your people. We are willing to negotiate." For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the entire facility was flooded with light from the ships above. The light was so bright that Marcus had to shield his eyes. Sophie buried her face against her father's body. A voice entered the communication system. It was not sound the way humans understood sound. It was more like a voice that appeared directly in their minds, bypassing the ears completely. The voice was deep and cold and filled with absolute confidence. "I am Velthorus of the Vexillian Collective. You are invaders on this world. You will surrender immediately, or you will all be destroyed. You have 1 hour to comply." Marcus felt Sophie shaking against him. He put his hand on the back of her head and tried to comfort her, even though he did not feel comforted himself. Outside, the honey badger had stopped digging. It sat motionless on the ground, its small eyes looking directly at the facility, directly at the window where Marcus and Sophie stood. The creature did not flee. It simply waited, as if it knew what would happen next. The weight of the situation pressed down on Marcus. He had brought his daughter to this world. He had believed the research was important. He had believed it was safe. Now, surrounded by alien ships with weapons he could not even comprehend, Marcus understood that he had made a terrible mistake. Patricia appeared beside him. "The shields are active, sir. But they will not hold if those ships attack. We do not have enough power." Marcus nodded. He pulled Sophie closer to him and stared out at the vast alien fleet that hung above them like a sentence of death. The two suns continued to set, their light growing dimmer as the Vexillian ships blocked out the sky. The honey badger remained still on the ground, waiting. And inside the facility, a human father and his daughter faced impossible odds, knowing that survival might depend on finding help in the most unexpected of places. The hour that Velthorus had given them passed slowly. Marcus stood in the command center with Patricia and 2 other team members, engineer David Brooks and communications officer Lisa Garcia. The walls of the command center were lined with screens showing the positions of the alien ships. All of them remained motionless, hovering above the facility. "They are not attacking yet," David said. He was a man in his 40s with dark skin and short hair. His hands were shaking as he checked the power levels of their shields. "They are waiting to see if we will surrender," Marcus said. "They want us to make a choice." "We are not in a position to fight them," Patricia said. "Our weapons are designed for research activities. We have nothing that could damage those ships." Marcus knew this was true. The Discovery was not a military vessel. They had come to study the planet, not to fight a war. Lisa turned around in her chair. She was younger than the others, maybe 30 years old, with red hair and freckles across her nose. Her eyes showed fear. "Captain, I am receiving a message. They want visual communication. A hologram will appear in the corridor outside this room," Lisa said. "Let them transmit," Marcus ordered. The lights in the corridor flickered. A figure materialized in the empty space just outside the command center. It was Velthorus. The alien was not solid in the way living things were supposed to be solid. It looked like it was made of crystalline structures that caught and bent light in strange ways. Its body was roughly shaped like a humanoid form, but the proportions were wrong. Its head was too large, its limbs too long and angular. Colors flowed across its surface like oil on water, shifting from blue to green to purple and back again. Where its eyes should have been, there were 2 points of pure white light. Marcus forced himself to step forward. He would not show fear. He had to believe that negotiation was possible. I am Captain Marcus White. I speak for the human people on this facility. We can discuss a peaceful resolution to this situation, Marcus said. Valtheros made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was harsh and cutting. Discuss? The alien said. Its voice entered their minds the same way it had before, bypassing their ears. You are primitives. Your words are noise. Your technology is dust. You do not have anything to discuss with the Vexillian Collective. Then why have you come here? Marcus asked. This planet belongs to the Vexillian Collective. It has belonged to us for 7,000 of your years. We allow the local animal life to exist because they serve a purpose. We do not allow invasive species to establish a presence, Valtheros said. Marcus took a breath. We did not know this world was claimed. We can leave. We can withdraw all our personnel and equipment. You will leave. But first, you will understand what it means to resist the will of the Vexillian Collective. Valtheros said. The alien's crystalline form shifted and changed. It pointed one of its long limbs at the facility. The human child. Where is the human child? Valtheros asked. Marcus felt his body go cold. The alien knew about Sophie. How did it know? The facility was shielded. The sensor system should have blocked any scans from the alien ships. The child is protected. She's no harm to you, Marcus said, and his voice was harder now. The child will be the example. Bring the child to the central platform of your facility. Do this now, or we will destroy the entire base with everyone inside it. Valtheros said. No, Marcus said. Then you have chosen your fate, Valtheros said. The hologram vanished. Red lights flashed throughout the facility. Alarms sounded. The shields were being bombarded with energy from the alien ships. The walls shook. Equipment fell from shelves and crashed to the floor. The shields will not hold more than 20 minutes. David shouted over the noise. Marcus ran through the corridors toward the habitation section where Sophie was. He found her in her quarters, sitting on her bed. She was not crying. She was not panicking. Instead, she was holding the honey badger creature in her arms. The animal had somehow gotten inside the facility. Marcus did not know how. There were security doors, locked passages. But the creature was there, and Sophie was holding it like a stuffed toy. His name is Chester, Sophie said. He came to help us. How did you? Marcus started, but there was no time for questions. He grabbed a survival pack from the wall storage and threw supplies inside it. Water purification tablets, emergency nutrition bars, a lightweight thermal blanket, a small communication device. Sophie, we need to leave right now, Marcus said. Where are we going? Sophie asked. Somewhere safe, Marcus said. He grabbed his daughter's hand and the honey badger in her other hand. Together, they ran toward the back sections of the facility. Marcus knew that tunnels existed beneath the research station. They had detected them during the geological surveys. The tunnels might lead somewhere. They might not. But staying in the facility meant death. The shaking grew worse. A section of the corridor ahead of them collapsed, blocking their path. Marcus pulled Sophie back and turned toward a side passage. It led to the lower levels of the facility. Chester, the honey badger, moved ahead of them. The creature moved with purpose and certainty. It ran toward a sealed door marked Restricted Access, Geological Survey. Marcus used his access code to unlock the door. The lock was mechanical and did not depend on the damaged electronics. The door slid open. Below, Marcus saw the beginning of a tunnel. Strange markings lined the walls. The markings were not new. They were ancient, worn smooth by time. Chester ran into the tunnel without hesitation. Daddy, we have to follow Chester, Sophie said. Marcus knew that keeping Sophie in the facility meant watching her be taken by the aliens. It meant watching her be used as a bargaining chip, It meant possible torture and death. Following Chester into an unknown tunnel was a risk, but it was the only choice left. "Come on," Marcus said. He lowered Sophie down into the tunnel entrance. Chester was already disappearing into the darkness ahead. Marcus climbed down after them. Behind them, the facility shook with another impact. Dust and debris fell from above. Marcus pulled the door closed and activated the lock from the inside. It would not stop them forever, but it might buy some time. Above, in the facility, Valtheros searched the corridors and found them empty. The human captain and the child were gone. The alien's crystalline form flashed with colors of anger and frustration. "Find them," Valtheros commanded. "Search the entire facility. And if you find the child, bring her to me alive. The captain may die." In the tunnel below, Marcus held Sophie's hand. Chester was ahead of them, walking with absolute confidence through the darkness. Marcus did not know where they were going. He did not know if they would survive. All he knew was that his daughter was alive and moving towards something that might be a chance. And above them, the alien ships continued their bombardment, raining fire on the research facility that was no longer their home. The tunnel was dark, but not completely black. Sophie walked between her father and Chester, moving deeper into the earth. Her small feet made soft sounds against the stone floor. Marcus held a flashlight that he had taken from the survival pack. The beam of light revealed walls that were smooth and flat, unlike natural stone formations. "These tunnels were made by something," Marcus said to himself. Chester moved forward without hesitation, never stopping at intersections or passages that branched off to the side. The honey badger knew exactly where it was going. It was as if the creature had walked these tunnels 1,000 times before. Sophie held her father's hand. She was not complaining or asking when they could rest. She was not crying or showing fear. Instead, she was watching Chester with complete trust. After they had walked for perhaps an hour, something strange happened. The walls of the tunnel began to glow. The glow came from the stone itself. Small crystals embedded in the rock started to emit light. The crystals were blue and green and violet. They lit up as Sophie and Marcus passed, creating a path of gentle illumination. "It is beautiful," Sophie whispered. The light grew stronger the deeper they traveled. Soon, they could see the walls clearly. The walls were covered with markings. They were not random scratches. They were deliberate images carved into the stone with precision and skill. Marcus stopped walking. He moved the flashlight across the walls, studying the images. They told a story. The first images showed figures that looked almost human. They were tall and elegant, with advanced equipment and tools. Beside them were creatures that might have been like the Vexillians, but different. These aliens looked less crystalline and more organic. The next series of images showed conflict. The human-like figures fighting against the aliens. The humans had weapons and technology, but the aliens were stronger and more numerous. The images became darker. The humans were retreating. Cities were destroyed. Entire civilizations were falling. The aliens were victorious. But the final images in this section showed something else. The humans were going underground. They were descending into tunnels. And with them were the honey badgers. The creatures were helping them, protecting them, guiding them to safety. "Daddy, look at this," Sophie said, pointing at the wall. Marcus followed her finger. The image showed a human child, much like Sophie, holding a honey badger's paw. Behind them, a tunnel extended into darkness. "This happened before," Sophie said. "The animals saved the people before." Marcus realized his daughter was right. These tunnels had been used before. An ancient civilization had been destroyed by alien conquest, just as Valtheros had threatened to do to humanity. But the honey badgers had helped them escape. They had preserved knowledge and life in the darkness below. They continued walking. The tunnel opened into a massive cavern. The cavern was so large that Sophie and Marcus could barely see the far wall. The ceiling stretched up into darkness that the flashlight could not reach. The cavern was filled with structures. They looked like buildings and machines from 1,000 years in the past, but they were not falling apart. They were not rusted or broken. They were still intact, still functional. Columns rose from the floor to support the ceiling. The columns were carved with more images, more history, more warnings about the danger that came from above. Chester ran directly toward the largest structure in the cavern. It looked like a control center, with panels and screens and devices that had no names in modern human language. Sophie tugged on her father's sleeve. "The pictures tell us what to do," she said. Marcus knelt down beside his daughter. "What do you mean?" Sophie pointed at the walls of the cavern. The walls were covered with more ancient carvings. These images were different. They showed how the underground machines worked. They showed sequences of activation. They showed a pattern. A 7-year-old girl should not have been able to understand ancient alien technology. Sophie should not have been able to read the instructions carved into stone thousands of years ago. But somehow, she did. Perhaps it was the desperation of the situation. Perhaps it was the purity of a child's mind, unclouded by doubt and complicated adult thinking. Sophie walked to the central control panel. The panel had many buttons and levers, all arranged in a pattern that matched the images on the walls. She reached up and pressed the buttons in the sequence shown in the carvings. Her small hands moved with certainty. The underground facility began to awaken. Lights appeared throughout the cavern. Machines hummed to life. The sound was deep and resonant, like the planet itself was breathing. Dust fell from the ceiling. The ground beneath them trembled. "Sophie, stop!" Marcus shouted, but his voice was not angry. It was filled with awe. "It is supposed to do this," Sophie said. She continued pressing buttons. More sections of the facility activated. Marcus could see screens coming to life, displays showing information in a language he could not read but somehow understood. Power flowed through cables and conduits hidden in the walls. The entire underground complex was awakening after thousands of years of sleep. Chester walked to Sophie and pressed against her leg. The honey badger made a sound that might have been approval or recognition. Sophie turned to her father. "Chester's people have been waiting. They were waiting for people to come back. People like us. Waiting for what?" Marcus asked. Sophie pointed at the screens. Images appeared showing the surface of the planet above. The alien ships were visible. They were attacking the research facility, destroying it completely. But they were also being affected by the activation of the underground network. Energy discharges were occurring around the facility. Electromagnetic pulses were radiating outward, interfering with the alien ship systems. "The old people left weapons," Sophie said, "but not to hurt. To stop them. To make them leave." Marcus understood. The ancient civilization had created this network as a failsafe. If invaders came again, if the planet was threatened, the systems would defend it. They would activate the planetary defenses that had been buried and hidden for thousands of years. "Sophie, you have to show me how to control this," Marcus said. Sophie moved to the main console. She began explaining the pattern to her father, pointing at symbols and sequences. Marcus listened carefully and began to understand. The ancient people who had built this had made the system simple enough for anyone to use. They had anticipated that those who return might not be the same species as those who had built it. Beneath the ground, in the cavern filled with ancient machines and technology, a human child and her father worked together to operate the final defense of a world that had once belonged to another people. And beside them, the honey badger that had guided them there watched and waited, as if it had always known this moment would come. Above the ground, The Vexillian ships began to experience problems they could not explain. Marcus stood in what remained of the research facility's main corridor. The walls around him were cracked and scorched. Dust hung in the air like a thick fog. His clothes were torn and dirty. His face had a cut along his left jaw where falling debris had struck him. He had made a choice to stay behind. He had known he could not stop the alien attack. He could not defeat them with weapons or force. But he could delay them. He could keep them distracted and searching. He could buy Sophie time to get as far away as possible. Altharos appeared again as a hologram, standing in the ruined corridor before him. "You have lost," the alien said. "Your child is gone. Your people are dead. Your civilization has failed." Marcus laughed. It was not a nervous laugh or a broken laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had nothing left to lose. "You know nothing about humans," Marcus said. "I have studied your broadcasts. I have read about your history. You have never faced an enemy that fought for something more than survival. You have never fought an enemy that would sacrifice everything to protect their children. That is what makes humans different from your kind." Altharos' crystalline form flashed with anger. "You are irrelevant," the alien said. But even as Altharos spoke, something was happening above them. The Vexillian ships began to experience problems. Their systems started to malfunction. Shields flickered. Navigation systems failed. Communication between ships became impossible. The alien commander did not understand it. There was no attack. No weapons were being fired at them. But their advanced technology was being disabled by something they could not see or fight in the bunker beneath the ground. Sophie worked at the control panel with her father guiding her. Marcus communicated through the small device he carried, telling his daughter what systems to activate and in what order. Sophie's small hands moved across the ancient controls with purpose. Above ground, Altharos screamed a command to his forces. "Find the human captain. Find what he is using. Destroy it now." But it was too late. Across the planet from the underground network, ancient machines began to activate. Electromagnetic pulses rippled outward in waves. Each pulse was stronger than the last. The Vexillian ships, designed with advanced but delicate technology, began to fail down in the skies above the research facility. Ships started to lose power. Some fell from the sky. Others became disabled, unable to move or fight back. The tactical advantage that the Vexillians had possessed only moments before was gone. And then something impossible happened. From the tunnels and caverns beneath the planet's surface, creatures began to emerge. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. They were honey badgers, but they were unlike the small creatures that Sophie and Marcus had seen on the surface. These were larger, faster, more aggressive. They moved with purpose and organization. The creatures came out of every opening in the ground. They emerged around the facility. They emerged across the continent. They created a living barrier between the alien invaders and the human infrastructure. Altharos watched from his ships as the creatures spread across the landscape. The alien commander realized something was happening that should have been impossible. The local animals were organizing. They were moving in coordinated patterns. They were defending something or someone. "The honey badgers are intelligent," one of Altharos' commanders said. "They are a sentient species. We did not know this." "It does not matter," Altharos said. But doubt had entered the alien's voice. Marcus received a communication through his device. It was Sophie. "Daddy, there are animals everywhere. They are coming out of the ground." "They are helping us," Sophie said, her voice filled with wonder and fear. "Stay with Chester," Marcus said. "Stay underground. Stay safe." In the corridor before him, Altharos' hologram flickered and became unstable. "This is impossible," the alien said. Primitive creatures cannot organize. Primitive species cannot develop intelligence. You are lying. You are using some trick. No trick, Marcus said. Just a species that was waiting for someone to awaken them. Your people invaded thousands of years ago. You thought you had destroyed everything. You thought you had won. But you were wrong. You only made them wait underground for the next intelligent species that might need their help. And that would be us. The Vexillian commander made a decision. He ordered the retreat. The remaining operational ships prepared to leave the planet. Some were damaged too badly to escape. They would remain on the surface, grounded and useless. The honey badgers did not attack the stranded alien soldiers. They simply surrounded them, preventing them from moving toward the facility or toward any human personnel. The Vexillian forces that could escape did so. The alien ships rose from the planet's surface and began their journey back toward Vexillian space. They had come expecting to destroy a handful of primitive humans. They had left defeated, their forces shattered, their technological superiority meaningless against an enemy they could not even comprehend on as the last of the alien ships disappeared into space. Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. His daughter was alive. Humanity on this planet was safe. And they had found an ally that the Vexillian collective had never suspected even existed. Marcus made his way to the tunnel entrance. He descended into the darkness, toward the cavern where his daughter waited, toward the ancient machines that had just changed the course of human history, toward the honey badger that had known all along what was needed to survive. Above the ground, thousands of honey badgers sat in silence on the rocky landscape of Kepler 442b, watching the sky where the alien ships had fled. They had been waiting for this moment for 1,000 years. They had been patient, and their patience had finally been rewarded. Marcus descended the tunnel with a headlamp attached to his forehead. The light cut through the darkness and revealed the ancient pathway. His breathing was loud in his ears. His heart was still beating fast from the stress of the last few hours. Sophie's voice came through the communication device. "Daddy, I can hear you coming." "Chester says we are safe now," Sophie said. Marcus moved faster. He reached the cavern and stopped. The sight before him took his breath away. The entire cavern was illuminated now, not by the gentle glow of crystals, but by the full power of the ancient facility. Light shone from every corner. Machines hummed with energy. Screens displayed information and data. In the center of it all stood his daughter, small and alone, her hand resting on Chester the honey badger. Marcus ran to Sophie and pulled her into his arms. He held her tight, lifting her off the ground, and for a moment he just held her and let the relief flood through his body. Sophie wrapped her arms around his neck. "You saved us," Marcus said. "Chester saved us." "And the old people saved us," Sophie said, her voice simple and honest. Marcus set Sophie down and looked at the ancient facility around them. He realized that this was not just a shelter or a refuge. This was a repository of knowledge. The walls contained records. The machines contained information. Everything that the ancient civilization had known before the Vexillian invasion had been preserved here. Marcus moved to one of the central consoles and began to explore. There were records of the ancient people. They had been advanced, with technology that rivaled or exceeded even the Vexillians. But they had not been warriors. They had been scientists and philosophers and artists. When the Vexillians came, they had chosen to hide rather than fight a losing war. But before they had hidden, they had built this facility. They had created systems and defenses that would protect anyone who came after them. They had left instructions, written in a language that was simple enough for any intelligent species to understand. "Daddy, look at this," Sophie said. She had moved to a screen that showed recordings. The recordings showed the face of an ancient being. It looked almost human, with pale skin and intelligent eyes. The being was speaking in a language that was not English, but somehow Marcus understood. The ancient being was leaving a message for whoever might find this place in the future. To those who come after us, the ancient being said, we have failed to stop the Vexillian invasion. We could not match their power, but we do not want future species to suffer our fate. We have left tools. We have left knowledge. We have left the honey badger species as guardians. The honey badgers are intelligent and have survived the invasion. They will help you if you are worthy. They will guide you if you are lost. They will protect you if you can protect them in return. This is the covenant we make with the future. Do not despair. The Vexillians are powerful, but they are not invincible. They underestimate species that are different from them. They believe that strength and technology are all that matter. They do not understand that compassion and cunning can defeat power. Use this knowledge. Use these tools. And if you are destroyed as we were, the next species to find this place will have hope that we are leaving for them. The recording ended. Marcus stood in silence. Sophie held his hand. They knew we would come, Sophie said. Yes, Marcus said. They built this for us, for any species that came after them. Over the next hours, Marcus explored the facility with Sophie. He found records of dozens of civilizations that had been destroyed by Vexillian conquest. Each one had left something behind. Some had left weapons. Some had left knowledge. All of them had left hope. Marcus discovered that the ancient records contained detailed information about the Vexillians, their strengths, their weaknesses, their patterns of conquest. Everything was documented and stored for future use. He found that the facility had a communication system. It was ancient, but it still functioned. Marcus activated it and sent a message. He sent it to every human settlement in the sector. He sent it to every research station and colony. In his message, he explained what had happened. He explained about the ancient facility. He explained about the honey badgers. He explained about the defenses that had saved them. His message spread quickly through human space. Scientists began to receive the coordinates of the facility. Historians learned about the ancient civilization. Military strategists studied the records of Vexillian weaknesses. For the first time in human history, the species was not alone against the greater powers of the galaxy. Humanity had found an ally and had discovered that they were not the first to face the threat of conquest from above. As the night deepened, Sophie fell asleep against her father's shoulder. She was exhausted from the emotional and physical strain of the day. Chester lay beside her, the honey badger's small body curled up close to the human child. Marcus watched over them both. He saw the ancient records displayed on the nearby screens. He saw the history of a civilization that had survived by adapting and helping others. He saw the pattern of species that had been threatened and had found ways to endure. He understood now that humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons or its technology. It was the willingness to protect the young. It was the ability to trust unlikely allies. It was the refusal to believe that defeat was inevitable. In the morning, more honey badgers would emerge from the depths of the planet. They would approach the surviving humans, no longer hidden, no longer afraid to show their intelligence. Some would be wary. Others would be curious. All of them would be the guardians of an ancient covenant that had been waiting for 1,000 years to be renewed. But for now, Marcus simply sat with his daughter and the creature that had saved them both, in a cavern filled with ancient light, and he let himself believe that humanity had a future among the stars.